Police are trained to face danger, but what about danger they can't see or explain? From people who vanish in plain sight, to shadows that leave real wounds, these are the moments that shook even the toughest officers. Here are the top 15 police encounters that defy all logic. 1. Capitol Theater haunting. It was 2012, Salt Lake City, Utah. The historic Capitol Theater stood tall, its gold-leaf ceilings and velvet curtains still shining like they did back in 1913. It was the kind of place where people came for opera, ballet, and Broadway shows, but beneath all that elegance was something strange. They say a young usher named Richard Duffin died in a fire in 1949, down in the basement. Locals claim he never left. On his first night shift, Sheriff's Deputy Dave Murphy had a strange laughter. It's just a theater, he thought. The building was empty. The stage was dark. He was walking along corridor when the men's room door slammed behind him. That door wasn't supposed to slam because it had hydraulic hinges. Curious, he called his partner to check the security cameras. Nothing, no movement, no figure, just an empty hallway. Later, Dave caught the smell of smoke, faint at first, then strong enough to make him think something was burning. But when he checked, no flames, no haze, just silence. The scent came and went as if someone was walking past him. Another officer, Matthews, had his own moment. Standing alone in the balcony, he heard strange noises, low, urgent voices right behind his ear. He spun around, flashlight ready. Nobody. Then came the woman. Dave swears he saw her, early 1900s dress, hair pinned up neatly, walking through the control room as if she belonged there. He blinked, and she was gone. Not walked out gone, just gone. Once, during an equipment check, the elevator moved on its own, going down to the basement without a single button press. A thermal camera even caught something, an unexplainable face that didn't look human. 3 officers saw it. No one talks about it now. The Capitol Theater is still open, still beautiful. But I wonder, when the lights goes down and the curtains close, who else walks those halls? 2. It was August 2016 in Rutherglen, Glasgow. A quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where police calls are usually about noise complaints or parking disputes. But that night, officers got a call from a terrified family. When they arrived, the house felt wrong. Lights flickered in every room, not like a faulty bulb, more like someone was playing with the electricity. A shirt flew off a chair and landed halfway across the room, as if thrown by invisible hands. Then the oven door swung open, hard enough to slam against the cabinet. The officers searched every inch, no intruders, no pranksters hiding. But the strangest part, their tiny chihuahua was missing. Chihuahua is what you're seeing on your screen. Minutes later, one of the officers spotted it, perched high on top of a 7-foot hedge in the garden. No ladder, no explanation. The poor thing was shaking. They stayed with the family, but more objects moved on their own, bed covers sliding off, taps turning, a lamp toppling. One officer later admitted, this wasn't something we could arrest. 3. The hung military man. Quiet evening somewhere in England when a British officer was called to a small terraced home. The report was for a mental health concern, a young man in distress. When the officer arrived, the man was pale, shaking. He kept glancing toward the staircase, refusing to go up. His voice cracked as he explained, a woman's voice told me not to go in my old bedroom. It sounded like stress, maybe grief. But then the man said something else, that room, an old soldier died there. The officer, trying to ground him, asked questions. The man described an elderly World War II veteran, full uniform hanging from the ceiling. The detail was sharp, as if he'd seen it himself. Curious, the officer later checked the address records. And there it was, years earlier, an old veteran had taken his own life in that very room. In full dress uniform. The officer didn't say much to the young man after that. How could he? The warning voice, the vivid image, maybe it was a ghost, maybe a hallucination. But the facts lined up too neatly to ignore. 4. Hotel apparition dispute. It was the middle of 2024, in a modest hotel away from a quiet city street. 2 officers arrived after a frantic call, a woman screaming that her husband had been attacked. They found him sitting on the carpet, one hand pressed to his ear. Blood trickled down his neck. He swore, eyes wide, that something shoved him. Not someone, something. No mental health issues, no alcohol in his system, and not a single sign of a break-in. Then his wife shouted from the bathroom. The door was locked from the inside, but she swore no one had gone in there. When the officers tried, it wouldn't budge. It was as if someone was holding it shut. Finally, they forced it open. The bathroom was empty. No windows, no escape route, but the temperature dropped instantly. It wasn't just cold. The officers both later admitted they felt it, the sensation of being watched. Not from the doorway, not from the mirror, from everywhere. They checked the room again. Nothing. But the husband refused to stay another night, and the wife wouldn't even step back inside. 5. The regular, the Pontianak, and the scratched car. It was a humid night in Singapore, sometime after midnight, when a small police team was patrolling around the Juchite complex. The streets were quiet, just the low hum of the patrol car and the distant buzz of night insects. Then, rustling. Not the usual kind from a stray cat or drifting trash. This was sharp, sudden, coming from a fallen tree nearby. They stopped, and that's when they saw her. A Pontianak, the ghostly figure from Malay folklore, an undead woman with long black hair and pale, twisted features, was there for just a second, crouched low, before leaping up into the trees. The air seemed to tighten. One officer muttered a curse under his breath. The partner called out for a spot check, expecting to see someone outside the car scanning the area. But when he looked, there was no one. The seat beside him was empty. His partner was still inside, wide-eyed. They didn't find anything unusual. But later, when they returned to the station, they saw it, deep scratches across the roof of their patrol car. Long black and white gouges, like something had scraped it with claws. No report was filed. They feared the laughter, the questions, the jokes that would follow. But those scratches, they were real. You could run your fingers over them. 6. The Phantom Officer. It was late evening, the air heavy with that strange stillness that comes after something terrible. A woman sat in her car, parked near her home, still shaken by a traumatic event that had unfolded just steps away. Then, a gentle tap on the glass. She turned, and there he was, a police officer. Calm, steady eyes. The kind of presence that makes you feel like you're safe now, even if you weren't a moment ago. He leaned slightly toward the driver's window, not saying much, just enough to let her know she wasn't alone. And then, he was gone. No footsteps, no fading away into the distance. 1 second there, the next, nothing. She thought maybe she'd imagine it, but it had felt too real. Later, she told her mother about it. Her mother shook her head. No officer came to your window, she said. I was watching the whole time. Years passed, and then she learned something that made the hairs on her neck stand up. The man who had died that night, right in front of that very door, was a police officer. One who had once lived in the area. 7. Vanishing police car, a Reddit user story. It was past midnight, the kind of quiet where the road feels like it belongs to you alone. A driver was making their way home when the glow of headlights appeared in the rearview mirror. Not just any headlights, a police cruiser. It was sitting by the roadside, perfectly still, the black and white frame half lit by the street lamp above. The driver passed slowly, glancing at the officer inside, or at least, they thought there was someone inside. 100 feet down the road, curiosity got the better of them. They looked back, and there was nothing. No tail lights, no car, no trace. Just empty road, lit only by the same single street lamp they'd passed moments ago. The driver blinked, thinking maybe they'd missed a turnoff, or that the car had driven off without them noticing. But no, they would have heard the engine. They would have seen the movement. This wasn't a sudden appearance, it was a complete erasure, as if the car had been plucked out of reality itself. 8. Noise complaint that changed their life, USA, Reddit, September 2024. It was after midnight in September 2024, somewhere in a quiet American neighborhood. Officers Mike and Paul were on the late shift when dispatch sent them to a noise complaint. Simple enough. The house wasn't labeled, no number on the wall, no mailbox, just a dim porch light, flickering. When they knocked, the door creaked open. A little girl, maybe 8 or 9, stood there. She said her name was Maribel. No parents in sight. Mike and Paul exchanged a glance. Something about her felt off. Before they could ask more questions, the TV inside switched on by itself. Static. They stepped inside, calling out for an adult. That's when they noticed the reflections in the hallway mirror warned theirs, taller shapes, moving when they didn't. Footsteps echoed above them, but the ceiling didn't have an upstairs. Then came the sound, a tearing, scraping noise from behind. Before they could turn, something, red, skeletal, shot out from the darkness. A clawed hand ripped straight through Mike's uniform, leaving deep scratches along his ribs. Adrenaline took over. Paul fired. The gunshot shattered the noise, and the thing let out a screech so sharp it rattled their teeth. Then, silence. When they rushed back to the patrol car, Maribel was gone. She'd been sitting in the back seat minutes earlier. The dash cam, dead. Body cams, dead. Back at the station, they ran her name through the system. She matched the missing persons report, 5 years earlier. Mike turned in his badge not long after. 9. Herbert Sharma, Ashland, Nebraska, 1967. It was the early hours of December 3, 1967. Sergeant Herbert Sharma was driving along Highway 63 in Ashland, Nebraska. Just after 2:30 a.m., he saw what looked like red blinking lights ahead, maybe a truck stopped on the road. But when he got closer, he froze. It wasn't a truck. It was a shining silver disc, hovering just a few feet above the ground, with a strange flame underneath and a high-pitched hum. And then, just like that, it shot straight up into the sky. When he looked at his watch, it was almost 3 a.m. But by his count, he'd been there maybe 10 minutes, meaning about 20 minutes of his life had just gone missing. Back at the station, he had a pounding headache and a strange red mark under his ear. Later, under hypnosis, he said he'd been inside the craft, shown star maps, and told that these beings were keeping an eye on humans. Whether you believe him or not, time loss is the one thing you can't fake. And that's what unsettles me here, the clock doesn't lie. 10. Alan Godfrey, Todmorden, West Yorkshire, 1980. 5 a.m., November 29, 1980. Police Constable Alan Godfrey was patrolling Burnley Road, looking for missing cattle. That's when he spotted what he thought was a bus up ahead. But it wasn't a bus, it was diamond-shaped, about the size of a car, spinning silently a few feet above the road. His radio died, and while sketching the object, a blinding flash swallowed him. The next moment, he was 100 yards further down the road, with no memory of how he got there. 30 minutes had vanished. Even stranger, the road was wet from rain, except for one dry, perfectly circular patch where the object had hovered. My concern is the detail of that dry circle. That's not the kind of thing you imagine, it's something you notice because it's there, staring you in the face. 11. Val Johnson, Marshall County, Minnesota, 1979. August 27, 1979. Deputy Sheriff Val Johnson was cruising a lonely road near Stephen, Minnesota. Suddenly, a beam of light came straight at his patrol car. He blacked out. When he woke up, his windshield was shattered, one headlight destroyed, the car's antennas bent, and his watch and the car's clock were both exactly 14 minutes behind the actual time. His eyes were injured, just like someone who'd been welding without a mask. I think it's one thing to see strange lights, but to wake up with your body and your car damaged in ways science can't explain. That's something else entirely. 12. Littleborough, Todmorden, West Yorkshire, 1980. It was 1980, a quiet drive between Littleborough and Todmorden in West Yorkshire. Officer Stephen Howard and Chris Fanhead were on routine patrol, the kind of shift where you expect nothing more dramatic than a stray ship blocking the road. But then, by a line of power pylons, they saw a strange, heart-shaped object, hovering. It spun slowly, almost like it was showing itself off. At first it glowed a soft yellow, but then, the color shifted, brightening into a bluish-white that almost had to look at in the night air. The two officers watched, unsure whether to approach or simply record what they were seeing. And that's when it got weirder. Their police radio came alive. But instead of local chatter from dispatch, the voices were coming from South Wales, over 200 miles away. That's impossible on standard police radio. The signal range just doesn't stretch that far. Not unless something else is boosting it. The voices faded as quickly as they came, leaving only static. The object, too, eventually slipped away into the dark, as if it had lost interest. 13. Yorkshire Radar Incident, 1980. It was 1980, North Yorkshire. The countryside at night was quiet, fields stretching into darkness, the hum of engines carrying across the cold air. 5 uniformed officers, split between 2 police vehicles, were on the move. But they weren't chasing a speeding driver. They were chasing something stranger. The call came in from radar control. An unidentified object was being tracked in the sky. No flight plan. No contact. Just a blip on the radar, moving at a pace that didn't fit any normal aircraft. And it was heading right across their patch. When the officer spotted it, it wasn't like any plane they knew, bright, glowing, and gliding low over the fields. They pushed the engines harder, headlights cutting across the dark lanes, tires hissing over the damp road. The object kept its distance, almost like it knew it was being followed. For miles, they tailed it, 2 cars, 5 officers, eyes locked on the sky. And then, it was gone. No fading out. No change in speed. Just gone, like someone had switched off a light in the middle of the air. Radar confirmed it too, the blip disappeared at the exact same moment. No wreckage. No trace. Just open countryside and a sky that suddenly felt far too big. 14. Cigar-shaped object, Dumfries, Scotland, 1980. It was the early hours of August 30, 1980, in Dumfries, Scotland. PC Smith was on shift, joined by 5 other officers in different parts of town. The streets were still, the kind of cold silence that makes you notice every sound, or in this case, the lack of one. Because above them, something enormous was moving. At first, it looked like a shadow, long and smooth, blotting out the stars as it slid across the sky. Then their eyes adjusted, and they saw it clearly. A massive, cigar-shaped craft, gliding silently overhead. No rumble of engines, no blinking aircraft lights, just an unbroken, metallic silhouette against the night. PC Smith couldn't speak at first, neither could the others. It wasn't just the size, it was the way it moved, slow, deliberate, as though it was watching. Civilians saw it too. People stepped out of their houses, pointing upward, faces lit by the street lamps. For once, there was no divide between police and public, they were all just human beings, staring at something they couldn't explain. Then, without a sound, the object changed course and drifted out of sight over the horizon. The Ministry of Defense was informed. The witnesses gave their accounts. And then, silence. No follow-up. No official explanation. Just a shared memory among those who stood under that strange sky. 15. Scholar Quarry, Lincolnshire, UK, 1980. It was late on December 24, 1980. The roads around Scholar were quiet, the kind of quiet where even the wind feels hushed. A male and female officer were patrolling when something strange caught their eye, a glow in the distance. At first, they thought it was a tractor's headlights cutting through the mist. But then, the light moved, smoothly, silently, and started to descend. They slowed the patrol car, staring. In the middle of an empty quarry, the glowing object settled, no landing gear, no dust cloud, no sound. Just there. The female officer gripped the wheel tighter. The male officer whispered something neither could remember later. They stayed in the car, not because they were lazy, not because they didn't want to investigate, but because something deep inside them screamed, "Don't go closer." They sat there for what felt like minutes, maybe longer, watching the object pulse faintly in the dark. And then, without warning, it shot upward, so fast it was gone in the blink of an eye. No scorch marks. No footprints. No evidence it had been there at all. When they filed the report, they kept the details sparse. Too many questions, not enough answers. What will you do as a police officer in one of these situations? Let me in the comment section. Subscribe and I will see you next week.